My name's Steve, and I'm not perfect, but I know God still loves me. When I was a young boy, I was in church every Sunday, every time the doors were open. Mom was taking us to church. I was baptized as a very young child as a Methodist, and then from then on we just kind of went to church every week. We would go every Sunday regardless of what was going on. It was just a Sunday ritual. We'd get up and we'd go to church on Sunday mornings. As we got a little bit older and started getting into the middle school years, we were still going to church, sitting with Mom. By that point, service was really boring for a teenage boy. My mom used to make me go to church every Sunday, makes me go every Wednesday night, used to make me go to the youth camps. And one time was at one of the camps up in, I guess it was up past Frederick, up in Western Maryland, and went just for the fun, made to go, but we had fun while we were there. We did the boating and fishing, and one evening service, I can't remember who was talking or what they were even talking about, but I remember I felt the need that I needed to ask Christ into my life. Yeah, and it wasn't too far after that camp that maybe a couple of weeks where I was back in the neighborhood and church just kind of became church again. I just kind of had flamed out and just wasn't into it. I was back in the neighborhood hanging out with the boys again. Life was definitely different during the week than it was on Sundays. I was more into hanging out with my friends in the neighborhood, doing the same kind of things that they were doing. And then, so it was still every Sunday I went to church. I was a Sunday Christian, but living life as a non-Christian outside of church, and all the way up in through high school. And before I graduated high school, I graduated from church. My brother graduated church before I did because he was older, so he stopped having to go to church when he turned 16. So I couldn't wait until I turned 16 and Mom wouldn't make me go to church anymore. And it was about that point where we were teenage boys. We were running around the neighborhood doing what teenage boys did. We were, standing on the corner asking somebody to go into the liquor store for us and buy us beer. We would hang out and, smoke pot and different things like that. And just, it was kind of just what everybody in the neighborhood did. There was nothing else going on, and it seemed like everyone in the neighborhood was doing the same thing. When I look back, I still can see that God was still definitely present. He was doing things that, I didn't realize at the time, but he was still there. I knew my mom was still praying for me. I knew my mom was still encouraging me to do the right things, and all of her friends and all of the older people that I knew at church, some of the old youth group leaders that I still had contact with, that, they would come over to the house and Mom would go over to their house and I'd go with her. They were good people. They're fun to hang out with. And I knew that they were definitely still keeping me in their prayers. They hadn't given up on me. Even a little bit later on, as I was probably about 18 or so, the friends that I was hanging out with in the neighborhood started really going down the wrong path and started getting into some heavy drugs and stuff like that. And God placed some other people in my life. There was a fellow named Chris. He was my best friend. By far, he's a great, great guy. But far from a Christian, but great guy, who kind of took me under his wings and kind of pulled me out of that crowd and, kind of told me, hey, don't go with those guys. They're not going the right way. Let's go over here. We'll still hang out and we'll still party, but we're not gonna go down that road. I was about 22 or 23, and I had a part-time job at Office Depot, and that's where I met my now wife, Christy. We were both working there part-time, and she was working up front as customer service, and I was stocking the shelves. And so, we used to flirt and mess around a little bit, and, go up front and mess with her all the time. She'd have to call back and say, customer needs some furniture brought up or something like that. And anytime she would call, I knew I would be the one running back and grabbing the furniture and bringing it up to the front, just so I could have a chance to mess with her and flirt and all that good stuff. The first time we ever went out, she had a boyfriend, but she went with her friends and I went with my friends. We ended up meeting down there at the club, and we both kind of knew that we were both going to be there, and we had been flirting back and forth at work. And at the end of the night, I ended up giving her a kiss, and her boyfriend actually saw it, I think, because he was there too. And and that kind of ended that relationship with her boyfriend, and yay for me. So from there, we started dating. We became a pretty regular couple, and we were just doing, our regular couple things. She had some religious background herself. Her parents never took her to church, but she used to love to go to church with her grandparents up until the time when her grandfather died. And then she became kind of bitter. She kind of blamed God for her grandfather dying. Why did God let this happen to my grandfather? He was too young to die. He's such a good man. Why did God let this happen? When we started dating, we were both kind of at the same point in our life where we just really didn't think we needed church. We didn't need God. We were kind of doing our own thing, and life was going along just fine. I asked her to marry me. It was on an Easter morning. Everybody was coming over to the house, and I wanted to be able to. Easter didn't really mean too much to me at that point in time. It was just people were going to be at the house, so it seemed like a good time we could just get engaged, and then I could tell everybody right there at one time. So one Easter morning, we were downstairs at my apartment in my mother's house, and I asked her if she would marry me. She said yes. So we went upstairs and we told everybody. During our engagement, Christy got pregnant with Ashlyn, and so we actually ended up pushing the wedding back a little bit. So it was actually cool to have Ashlyn as in our wedding. She was still just a baby in her grandmother's arms, but it was neat to have her there. We were still just going along, living life, and then still not ever going to church, except for on Christmas and Easter. My mom would ask us to go. Sure, Mom, we'll go to church. Okay, yeah, it's Christmas Eve. Yeah, we'll go to church. We going to dinner afterwards? Yeah, we'll go on Easter. We going to dinner afterwards? That kind of thing. So we would go and hang out just to appease Mom. And then other than that, we were just living our life as we always had. There was no God, there was no church. So one Easter, we were sitting in church. We said, yeah, Mom, we'll go to church this Easter. So we went, and we're sitting in service, and the kids were downstairs, and started listening to the sermon and started making some sense. So we ended up going home from that service, and we didn't talk too much about it, me and Christy. Just kind of went on, just kind of ignoring the fact that we had just been to church again on Easter Sunday. But then it was maybe a day or two later, maybe even that same night, and Christy said, I think I might go back to church with your mom next week. And kind of caught me by surprise, but before she had even said it, I was thinking the same thing. And I said, you know what? I think I'll go with you. We started going back to church. We started going every Sunday, just about. The Holy Spirit was definitely working in those church services. It was like almost every Sunday, the message seemed like it was directed right at me. Brittany had been born, and so we had Ashlyn and Brittany, and started thinking, maybe this is a good place for our kids. So even as we started to attend church regularly, we were still having issues, especially in our marriage. Our marriage was in turmoil. We were having a rough spot of it there. We were constantly fighting. We were fighting over money. We were fighting over just different issues. I'd take a lot of blame for that. A lot of it was me just thinking about me and still wanting to be a single young man and do single young man type of things when I had responsibilities at home that I wasn't taking care of. I was going out to the bars still with my friends and hanging out and just not paying much attention to the family. We were actually almost to the point of, we talked about getting a divorce. We were pretty close. And looking back, again, even in that time, I know God was present. He kind of led us both to go and get counseling. He didn't let us just give up. Some of the services that we were hearing in church were just relating directly to what we were going through. It felt like, again, every sermon was pointed right at you. Hey, this is for you. And then Christy, same thing. Hey, this is for you. And so by the grace of God, once we started accepting God into our lives again, he kind of patched things up between us. As we were sitting in service, listening to these messages, things were stirring. It was the Holy Spirit stirring inside of us, just telling us, this, as a man of God, if that's what you want to be, this is, you need to treat your wife better and take your responsibilities like a man. So we were going back to church, and life was getting put back together. God was doing things in our lives. He was kind of getting us right back on the right track. One Sunday service, there was an altar call at the end of the service, and I just knew that it was time for me to ask Christ back into my life. So I went and did the altar call and accepted Jesus again. And that was an awesome time in our lives. It was, you could feel a sense of relief. The fighting stopped almost completely, but it was just so much better. You could breathe, you could talk, you could laugh, you could have fun together again. We weren't having fun together, but then once we recommitted to Christ, we were able to. We started having fun with each other again. So I knew at that point I was saved. I knew I had Christ in my life. I knew I was going to go to heaven. Next logical step, I guess, was to go ahead and get baptized. Couldn't do it. Didn't want to do it. It just, it seemed, I was just struggling with it so much. I just didn't want to be hypocritical. I knew I wasn't perfect, and I still had some really bad habits that I was doing and dealing with in my life, and it just didn't seem like I was good enough to get baptized. There were definitely things that God was speaking to me about, telling me I needed to give them up, I needed to hand it over to Him, and I wouldn't do it. I just wasn't ready. I just didn't, I was being stubborn, I was being disobedient. I knew I was supposed to hand things over to God and let Him take control, and I just wasn't ready to do it. So even over the next 10 years, I really struggled with it. I would start to grow, and I would, and then I would hit a stumbling block and just go nowhere, and then I would start to grow and hit a stumbling block, fall backwards in my walk with Christ, and it was just, I was stuck in a rut. My daughter, Ashley, she got baptized, and then my wife, she got baptized, and a couple years later, my daughter Brittany, down at the Big Stuff camp just a year and a half ago, she ended up getting baptized in the ocean in front of the world, and she was encouraging me big time. Brittany would always ask, Dad, will you get baptized with me? So I'm seeing these things happen, and I'm getting encouraged by it. It's awesome. I'm proud. I'm so, this is my family. Look at them. This is awesome. And it was encouraging. It would give me motivation to take that next step. But yet I still just wasn't ready. I wasn't good enough. I still didn't think that I was good enough to get baptized. Didn't want to be a hypocrite. After Brittany was baptized, I started hearing more and more from people in my life, from the services AJ was preaching about next steps. Just kept getting pushed more and more towards that next step for me of baptism. So I started to learn that baptism isn't about being perfect. It's just about taking that next step. It's about being obedient. And even during this time, I was still having some struggles, but I was seeing God working. He was answering prayers. There would be certain months where money would get tight, and we weren't sure how we were going to pay this bill, how we were going to pay that bill, or the car would break down, and we just spent all of our money, and somehow or another the money came and we paid our bills. I had been a smoker for years. I'd smoked since I was in middle school, I guess, and I tried several times to quit. I tried the patch, I tried the pills, I tried cold turkey, just couldn't do it. Finally, I was like, God, I need you for this one. I can't do it by myself. I've tried and I can't do it. And then one day driving to work in the morning, I was just talking to God and said, God, this one's on you. If I need your help to quit smoking. And it's been just about a year now, and I haven't smoked a cigarette. And so that just continued to prove to me that God doesn't need a perfect person, a perfect Christian. He's with you the whole time. He's with me the whole time. He answers prayers. And so as I started seeing him answer these small prayers, some of these bigger prayers, he's answering prayers. He's with me. Why wouldn't he be with me in everything? Why wouldn't I give him everything? I'm giving him these small things and he's taking care of it. It's time to give him some big things. I finally realized I needed to just start being obedient. I needed to do what I was being told to do. And that's, I said it at Easter and I'll say it now, just what I tell my kids: do what your father told you. Do what your father tells you. So on Easter Sunday, 2013, that's when I made my public commitment to Christ, and that's when I got baptized. And ever since Easter, just in that short span of time, I've not hit those stumbling blocks that I was hitting. My faith has grown, my relationship with God is growing continuously, and it's just, now I'm looking for my next step.